we've started.
Okay. The cow's tongue prickly pear here was in the yard when we moved in, but it's grown tremendously. As a matter of fact, the yard was fairly bare when we moved in, and so most of these plants have either been planted by us or they volunteered. And you can see the creosote bushes along here. I believe they're all volunteers. They've gone to town. If you don't nuke your yard with weed killer, it really starts becoming a lot more natural. Now, one thing that's not native to here, but it's growing behind that prickly pear is aloe, and I'm trying to remember if it's aloe barbatus, and I don't remember. But they're blooming even before the hesperaloes, the red yuccas, so this is exciting. And you can see that there are, the Penstemon perryi have gone everywhere. There's a golden barrel cactus just to the right, and then you can see two really huge agaves. I believe they're agave chrysantha, and those are actually growing in the gully behind the house. There were so many of them that Charlie dug up a couple and planted them in the yard, and they're doing really well. Now, if you look over at this plant right here, one is still blooming, and it's a really interesting plant in the Acanthaceae family. It's Dicliptera resuspinata, or something like that, for the species epithet. But when we first saw them, we could not figure out what they were, because we were thinking of a different kind of family, like pea family, and these are in Acanthaceae, which we normally don't see in Colorado. Okay, a whole bunch of Penstemon perryi decided they liked this spot because it has gathered a lot of water, apparently. Water drains through this area, so the plants are happy as can be, and there are also a lot of Dicliptera. Foldwing is the common name of Dicliptera. Okay, here are more brittle bushes, and it's so nice to see some pollinators there. Now here we have the Africanized bees, but we haven't had any trouble from them. As far as we know, they only become really aggressive if you get near their hives, and fortunately they don't have any hives around here, so we can walk by them when they're feeding on the flowers, or they go to the hummingbird feeder too, and they're never aggressive, so that's a relief. Also, they're not really blooming much now, but Trixus californica has planted itself in the yard. We planted one to start with here, but then another one spread over there, so that was exciting to see the spread. We've noticed, the nomenclature's changed. Oh, okay. I was going to talk about the berberis.
Oh, okay.
But the berberis do really well, and I'm trying to remember if that one's Fromentii or Hematocarpa or Hematocarpa, you think? Something like that. Okay. So a block away they have one, and it just gets covered like Mahonia repens does with the yellow flowers, and it's very fragrant. Okay, now we're going this way.
Yeah. There's the mountain lemon.
Oh, why don't you talk about that, Charlie?
I don't know. What do you want me to? Mountain lemon.
Marigold.
Marigold. Really smells. We just planted it. It hasn't bloomed yet.
And I think it is Tagetes lemoni is the scientific name. They get tall and they have showy yellow flowers. These are just regular privets growing next to the house. We were here to start with, and they seem to be a popular place for hummingbirds to build their nests. As you know, we're interested in wolfberries, which are in the Solanaceae family, the tomato family, and This one is a species from Baja California, and it has been blooming just usually one or two blooms at a time. I think Charlie's going to try zooming in on it for, gosh, a couple of months now. And this one, we've seen it at Desert Survivors Nursery, and it gets huge, like 10 to 12 feet tall. And after blooming with these inconspicuous flowers, it will form really pretty red berries. And the plant looks most spectacular when it's covered with its fruit. Right now, the passion flowers aren't blooming, but they are, we have them growing on different trellises and so forth, and they're really spectacular when they bloom at night, but unfortunately, wrong time of year. There are a couple more Texas Ranger plants over there. Minerva's cat runs behind that, and there's a cute little trellis thing with ocotillo canes on top that Charlie built when that wonderful huge ocotillo in the backyard died from the slugs that attacked its roots. Charlie used the leftover canes for the roof. Okay, now this is from the Rhamnaceae family. It's Condalia, and I can't remember the specific epithet for this one. It's not the one we see growing in this area. This one is called Sweet Condalia, and it forms a huge shrub. We saw it at the Boyce Thompson Arboretum, and the flowers are so sweet-scented. It's like dying and going to heaven to walk past one when it's blooming. And is it the ocotillo you want me to talk about? This ocotillo Charlie planted really early on when we moved here, so it must have been close to 2013, I think. And they just grow really, really slowly. Right now, this one, you know, they respond to moisture by growing leaves, but in terms of when they bloom, that's more controlled by the light cycle. So it will be blooming a little later. And there is another one of those agaves that Charlie rescued and are now forming pups, Agave chrysantha, which is the one that we normally see when we're hiking in the Catalina Mountains. And of course a Palo Verde tree, they're always coming up, Palo Verde and mesquite trees, and this one decided to grow within the fence. Okay, now I believe this agave is Agave Murphyi, and we went to a talk by some archaeologists, Suzanne and Paul Fish. You'd think they'd be ichthyologists. At a Hohokam site over by a mountain, and apparently the Hohokam Indians cultivated Agave Murphyi here in the Tucson area. They take a long time to mature. I think it was at least 15 to 20 years, so they were planting them for future generations. Over here is Mariola, let's see, Parthenium incanum. And when I worked at Desert Botanical Garden, Dr. Howard Scott Gentry, who was not only an agave expert but an economic botanist, was growing this to see how much rubber it would yield. He was interested in it as an economic crop. Over here is, oh, these smell so good, Aloysia, and there are two species, and I'm going to forget them. This is the one that we see less frequently in the mountains, but when they bloom, they are spectacularly fragrant. When we got them at a nursery, we could smell them from yards and yards away. Down there is Yucca elata, which is soap tree yucca, so it will get a tall stalk, but it's taking its time getting established and growing. And it will have a spectacular bloom of the white flowers. Then Charlie's planted some agaves over there, and I think some of our old agaves bloomed and then they died since they're monocarpic. But here, these are probably Agave chrysantha, if Charlie planted them, yes. And there's an Ocotillo Fuchsiaria splendens that Charlie planted a long time ago, and as I said, they grow slowly. There's a tree next to it that we planted. Well, Charlie planted. It's Acacia farnesiana, I think is the scientific name, and you know it is sweet acacia. It gets those powder puff yellow blossoms that are very fragrant, and you can smell them from a distance, and it should start blooming any time now. They have some over by the wonderful restaurant El Charro's, and so when we're eating on the outside patio, we can smell them blooming and enjoy their yellow flowers. What next, Charlie?
Oh, the Opuntia.
Oh yeah, in the cage. Now don't worry, it's not aggressive or anything. But inside that cage is a prickly pear that's cultivated in Mexico. I think it was cultivated for the cochineal that would grow on it, that they made the red dyes from, but also for its fruit. And it's called fig prickly pear, Opuntia ficus indicus. And okay, Charlie. Now this whole area here is a relatively new cactus and succulent garden that Charlie and I developed on our own. This was kind of wasteland when we moved in. It was there was nothing on it, and it's been exciting to see it develop. On the left side are totem pole cacti, and they're really interesting. And we'd seen a collection of them at the Tohono Chul Botanical Garden, and they looked so interesting that we thought that we'd plant some together like that, and they've been fun to watch. They seem to produce weird little flowers. I don't know if they're fertile. I think maybe not. Also, growing there's a kind of barrel cactus that's not the one that's native to this area, but its blooms are spectacular. They're really orange, and next to it you can see some orange barrel cactus. They also aren't native to the area, but there's a King Choya right there that is, and it is not blooming now, but its flowers are just spectacular and pink. Now down there on the ground, growing next to a fishhook cactus is, well, its old name was Lotus rigidus. So it's, let's see, some lotus are called deervetch. This one grows tall, and we've seen it growing up the Catalina Highway. And next to it, this is something we got at a plant sale, and they've been growing real well. It's Forma salvia, and it blooms kind of bluish purple blooms. And next to that is a fairy duster, and the ones from the area here they're not as showy as the California fairy duster. This is Calliandra areophila, and so they can look kind of reddish when they first start blooming, but you can see these aren't the kind of pea flowers that we think of in Colorado. And I think Charlie is focusing on another one, and then also here there's an interesting prickly pear. It's Opuntia macrocentra, and you can see it has really, really long spines, and the coloring of the pads is a little like that of the Santa Rita prickly pear. It does tend to have a little purplish or reddish on the pads. What are we looking at next, Charlie?
Brittlebush.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the brittle-bush is going gangbusters over there, and we do have some Asclepias, vining Asclepias. Now they're not Asclepias anymore, though, I don't think. Growing on the wire here. I'm trying to remember. Now the genus isn't Asclepias. It might be Metalia. I'm not sure. I should have looked at plant names before doing this. Okay, this tree is the favorite of the birds, and they really like the suet here. So we've seen Phainopeplas and Pyraloxia, and the Gila woodpeckers love it, and acorn woodpeckers, and yellow-rumped warblers, and curve-bill thresher. And I hear, I don't know if that's coyotes or birds off in the distance.
Agave Perry, a Pomerine.
Oh, okay. So Charlie knows the agave so well. So the one growing here under the tree is Agave palmeri, and obviously it really likes the protected location. Also, to the right here is the saguaro that Lorraine gave us. And it was just a little guy when we planted it, and they grow a lot faster than people say they do.
Let's go up to the dahlia.
Yeah. Okay, up here, Charlie left an area when we were building the patio, and yes, we did that together. And it even has a round place. But these are actually two different dahlias next to each other, and they just got so big. They love this spot. The one with the really showy flowers that reminds you a little of Dahlia pulchra is Dahlia versicolor, and it's D-A-L-E-A is this kind. It's not Dahlia. And you can see a lot of pollinators on it, lots of honeybees, but we've seen a lot of other pollinators too. Now the one Charlie's focusing on is less showy, and it's Dahlia bicolor. And you can see it has the really elongated receptacle. So it just isn't as showy. Let's see, growing, there's a Candelariella growing
Can't see it.
through it, but you can't see it. And then down here, we never thought we'd get these to grow. Some of the simplest plants we had trouble establishing, but this is triangle leaf bursage. So that's probably Ambrosia deltoides. And there's also, let's see, burrowweed right here, and you can look at the shape of the flowers. It's really interesting. But this is Isocoma tenuifolia, and so it's a very common bush here in the desert. It blooms yellow. Now, okay, do you want to do here's
Yeah.
Marina, and I'm just blanking at the specific epithet. But when we first saw it, before it got big, we had originally thought they were astragalus. But then Lorraine taught us about, I think it's Marina perrii is the specific whole name. And behind it is a small example of Solanum hindsianum. And you can't trust me with these names because I haven't looked at them for a while. But this is obviously in the, it is a Solanum's. Oh, there's a little white spider. This really cool white spider on this one. I wonder if Charlie can zoom in. And this is the back of the flower, but these plants get to be 10 feet tall. They're amazing. And I know we saw them with Lenore when we went to the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. They had them growing next to the cafeteria, and they were loaded with blossoms and just truly amazing looking plants. And the leaves are such an interesting light green color. And kind of.
Can you turn the blossom around?
Okay, and we'll see one of these again. Okay. Oh, isn't that pretty? But it looks like your typical potato family flower.
Okay.
And then here...
there's hummingbird feeders and bells.
Oh, yeah. The reason the bells are there and the bells are there because the Gila woodpeckers were coming to the hummingbird feeder and spilling all the sugar water. so Charlie came up with this obstacle course that they have to go through, and it slows them down a little.
There's
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, so here we added plants to this cactus garden. There's Santa Rita prickly pear down there. I think it's like Opuntia Santa Rita A or something. And a barrel cactus. The barrel cactus, as they grow, they always tilt and eventually they fall over. Now, we don't know how that makes any sense, but that's what they do. And next to it, Charlie planted this Desularian wheeleri, this so tall or desert spoon, and ouch, they have saw-like edges. They draw blood. Down here, now we think this is Agave shottii, and there's been confusion with the nomenclature and changes in nomenclature lately, but next to it is a teddy bear cholla, and they're the ones that real easily come off and attach to your clothes, which hurts like heck because they have spines and glochids. And on the ground you can see some joints that have fallen off, and it will hopefully grow into new cacti. They'll sprout some roots. The rincons are back in the distance. And then saguaros here have grown so much since we moved in. The old stories we heard about how slow they grow just aren't true. And you can see that one has become deformed. It can happen from frost, it can happen from drought, and we wonder if it's going to become crusted because it's really odd looking right now. One thing though, these cacti bloom every year and form good fruit, and we see the white-winged doves really like them and are supposed to be pollinators, but we see plenty of bees going there. This
I'm going to swing around.
Okay, we have a lot of different Spiralcias in the yard, and they've been self-sowing, which is wonderful. So Charlie's pointing now at Spiralcia ambigua. They have the orange flowers. The Spiralcia laxa also has orange flowers, but in the middle they have kind of purple or red anthers. And so that's how you can tell them apart. Next to that is another Solanum heinesianum. And next to that, look at the size of this Spiralcia. It's like a shrub. And let's see, okay, there's a bee inside there. The bees love this, and I'm trying to see, does it have red anthers, Charlie?
Yes.
Okay, so that would mean this is some variant of Spiralcia laxa. The color is so beautiful, and you can see the whole plant is blooming now, and it's more than 3 feet tall. But you can hear the bees buzzing around it. So it's very different from the Spiralcia coccinea that we see in Colorado.
Okay, let's back up so we can get the size.
Yeah, it's huge.
Okay.
Did you want the buckwheat?
Sure.
Okay, so is that, which buckwheat?
Righty-eye.
Oh, Eriogonum rightii. And do you remember the common name for that one?
No.
But anyway, it's gotten really big. And then there's
That's the Disodium.
oh yeah, fetid marigold is the common name for that. And the name for there are a couple, another one that looks like that, it's called Odora, and their names are so similar that I'm not going to attempt them right now, not having looked at.
We got 4 minutes left.
Okay, over here, this just came up on its own. At first we thought it was a weed, but it's called feathery cassia. They're from Australia, and obviously are grown as horticultural plants here. And it blooms like mad, and the fragrance is heavenly. It'll form pods, but the flowers don't look like traditional pea flowers. And then Charlie is about to run out of time on this, so
We're going to do the Phoralsias over here. The other Phoralsias.
oh, good idea. Oh, and that Nicotiana obtusifolia went nuts this year, and so it's very weedy looking, and we probably shouldn't have left it, but we thought that Lorraine would be excited to see it. And over here they're jojoba, but they're also these really interesting colored Phoralsias. We have a male and female jojoba, and they grow slowly. Jim Verrier at the Charlie is photographing the beautiful Phoralsias that come in different colors. Jim Verrier at the Desert Survivors, he's manager now and an incredibly knowledgeable botanist, and he said friends don't give friends small jojobas, Simonsia chinensis, because they grow so slowly, and you don't want to have to wait very long. Okay, but you can see there all these variations in Phoralsia color. That's our neighbor Boulder barking. He gets excited when we're outside. Okay, is that all?
Well, we got the Catalina Mountains.
Oh, yeah. Okay, up to this side where Boulder lives are the Catalina Mountains. So Tucson is surrounded by mountains. They're the Catalinas to the east, and the Rincons are really are the Rincons to the east, sorry, the Catalinas to the north, and that's where Mount Lemmon is, and you go up through the different life zones. Then to the west are the Tucson Mountains, which are smaller volcanic mountains, and to the south are the Santa Ritas. That's where the jaguar has been spotted by wildlife cameras during the night. They call him El Jefe, meaning the boss. And then the big saguaro that was here to begin with had a dramatic, well, it's still here, but the top of it is gone. The top was almost as large as the mountain is now. And the woodpeckers used to nest in the holes, but it just, we noticed it was leaning to the side, and one night in bed we heard this giant boom, and wondered what had happened. And when we came outside, we found this huge piece of saguaro lying on the ground. And it lost a second piece too. When you see them leaning, be careful, don't get too close, because they have killed people when they've fallen on people. We heard the story of this guy who shot one up, and then it got so weak it fell down on him and killed him. So it got its revenge. Charlie has been trying to identify this wolfberry or Lycium. It was sold to us as Lycium andersonii, but he thinks it might be Lycium fremontii or maybe even Lycium excertum. The keys just don't give enough features to be able to distinguish the different species, but I don't know if Charlie's getting it now. It has, the flowers are very tiny, they're tubular.